All right, so welcome to Why Your Fiction is Flat and How to Fix It. I'm going to talk about a secret code that uses psychology and emotion to help fix the problems that you're having with your story that you're writing, with your manuscript, all of that. So, this is the problem that most of you are probably experiencing or something really close to it, okay? You hear things like, I liked it and it was good. So, when you share your writing with other people, this is the kind of feedback that you're getting. The writing was really clean. But the problem is you didn't write 90,000 words so someone could say they liked it, right? You wrote it because you wanted them to love it so much and be so emotionally connected to it that they stay up till 2 a.m. to finish it. That's what we all dream about when we want to write our manuscripts. So here's what's really happening. It could be that nothing is technically wrong with your writing, okay? And that actually becomes more frustrating than if there was, because that means there's nothing to fix. So nothing is really wrong, but it's also not working. It also could be that maybe you haven't shared your fiction with anyone else, and so nobody's really said anything at all, but when you read it back to yourself, something at the center feels hollow and you just don't know what it is or how to fix it. So, is that you? I want you to ask yourself, is that you? You'll know within about 10 seconds, but I want you to type "that's me" in the chat if it is. And that's because I want you to see that everybody goes through this, okay? It's actually very normal when you're starting out. So, the single most important thing I'm going to say today, there is a code. It is based in psychology and emotion that makes a story unputdownable. Basically, think of your favorite book. Think of any book that is really popular. You know, the author is popular, has lots of fans, lots of readers. It's, you know, top of all of the Amazon lists. It's getting lots of attention on Book Talk. Okay, any story where that is the case, this unputdownable code is in the story. It has to be, because this is the code that leads to readers loving it that much. So if they didn't love it that much, the code probably isn't there. If they do, the code has to be there. This code is not about talent or luck, okay? It's not about you. You got to get it out of your head right now that there's something wrong with you or your creativity or your writing process. Okay, it's not. It's not lightning in a bottle that strikes some authors and magically skipped you. That's not what's going on here. It is a code. It is learnable. It is repeatable. It is a step-by-step process. And it can be applied to a new book that is just being created or to a book that's already written, okay? And in that case, you'll be tweaking and adding to what you already have, not torching and rebuilding. Your manuscript is not broken beyond repair. Please hear me when I say that, okay? And you are not short on talent. You are just missing a specific layer to your story that nobody has ever taught you before. And it can be installed in the book you've already written. So let's be honest. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Before I show you the code, let's be honest about where you are right now. I have coached many writers at exactly the stage you are at. And as I go through these, type the number of any of them in the chat that hit home, okay? The "I liked it" verdict. You finally worked up the courage to hand your manuscript to beta readers. The feedback came back polite. I liked it. It was good. And that word "liked" sat in your chest like a stone. So you can't even push back on the feedback because there's nothing to push back on. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is working. So that's number one. If you've ever experienced anything like that, put a 1 in the chat. Number two, the beta reader who went quiet. They were excited to read it. They told you they started it, and then nothing. Eventually, you asked gently and got, "I've been so busy," but you both knew they're probably not going to get back to it. So you lie awake wondering, where, what page, what did I do or not do right there, right? It's just clearly they were excited about it, but when they started reading it, it fizzled pretty quickly, okay? So that's number two. If you've experienced that, put a 2 in the chat. The drawer manuscript. It's done. There's a folder named Final, Final version 2, Final version 7, really the final. This makes me laugh because I specifically have a writer friend who she and I critique each other's stuff, and she 100% names her drafts this way. So this just cracks me up that lots of people do this, right? Every time you think this is the round, you open it, you read a few pages, and then you feel that terrible little sag. So you do another polish pass that changes commas but fixes really nothing. Or you start a shiny new project instead because starting feels starting fresh feels safer than trying to do another pass, right? This is how we end up with a file on our computer full of unfinished manuscripts. So if you've ever had that, then what are we at here? We had a 4, put a 4 in the chat. The chapter 1 loop is number 5. You've written your opening chapter 5 times, 10 times, maybe more, a different scene, a different POV, in medias res. Each version is a little more polished, but none of them fixes the feeling that your story is falling flat. So you keep polishing the doorway, meaning the opening chapters, but the problem was never chapter 1. It doesn't matter if the house behind it isn't wired for electricity. So if you've written and rewritten especially your opening chapters before, or any chapter in the book that you feel like is falling flat and you keep rewriting it, hoping to make it better, but it still overall doesn't really fix things, then put a 5 in the chat. And this is one that I have definitely done before. The structure graduate is number 6. You've done the homework. You know the 3-act structure, your beat sheets, your midpoints and pinch points, and you can label every beat in your story, and you have. So you watch your structurally sound book still lie flat, the cruelest version because the craft books never told you why. You can read all the craft books in the world, and understand, please, I am not bashing craft books. I am not bashing story templates. I love those things. I think they are so valuable, but just using them to write your story still isn't quite hitting what you need to hit. Okay, we're still missing a layer of your story. Most of those things teach you plot craft, okay, and they're wonderful. They're very helpful, but plot is only one layer. And if you're just doing that, you're still missing the underlying layer, that is going to make readers absolutely fall in love with and salivate for your stories. Okay, so I'm definitely one of these, a number 6 structure graduate. If you are too, then put a 6 in the chat. The flat protagonist. This is a big one. Somewhere deep down, you suspect your main character is the problem. You gave them quirks, a tragic backstory, flaws because the internet said flawed characters are relatable. So you love them in your head, but they read like a person-shaped placeholder moving through your plot. They just refuse to come alive on the page. I think we're at 7 now, right? I guess I need to number these. If this is you, put a 7 in the chat. Have you ever worried that your protagonist is just coming across as flat and you don't know how to fix them? Okay. What if the 6 experiences you just saw were all symptoms of the exact same fixable root cause? Now, before we go on, all right, we've got a 1, a 2, a 3, a 5, a 7. Okay. So as you can see, we don't have a ton of people on here live, but everybody has been through these same experiences or some version of them. It might be a slightly different than how I described it, but related. This is very common for early writers to go through. I've been through them all. Every writer I have ever coached has been through them all, okay? And what I'm here to tell you, and I really want you to take this in, is that these are all symptoms of the exact same fixable root cause, okay? It's manifesting in slightly different ways for different writers, but it all comes down to the same thing. They are not 6 problems, but 1, and I discovered them in their solution the hard way. Let's talk about, I'm going to tell you a little story about me, okay? This is why I teach. When I was a kid, I didn't always feel safe, and I don't mean physically. I always felt safe physically, but I didn't always feel safe emotionally, and that is a very common experience to have as a human being. And for those of us who don't feel safe expressing emotion, we tend to bottle it up. But emotions weren't meant to stay bottled. They need to come out somewhere. We need to express them somehow, someplace. We all know that if you bottle things up, eventually you're going to explode, right? For many of us, the outlet we use to express our emotions, to feel and process our emotions, was fiction. Characters became our best friends. Fictional worlds became our favorite places to feel safe, even if we were facing terrifying odds in those fictional worlds. So give me a yes in the chat if that describes your relationship with books at all. Hold on to that. And really, because that experience is kind of the key to everything that I teach, okay? So I wanted my fiction to feel epic. I knew I wanted to write fiction for others. I just didn't have the words for what I wanted it to do. I'd say things like, my favorite books are so epic, like the ending was so epic, and I want to write fiction like that. Now, again, I just didn't have the words back then, but what I was really saying is that I wanted my fiction to be emotional. I wanted it to create the same reaction in my readers that my favorite fiction books created in me. So I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to get that response. I knew the outcome, but not how to get there. Then, when I was in college, I attended a League of Utah Writers workshop. League of Utah Writers, I'm from Utah, it's just the local writing organization, right? And an author named Dan Wells, some of you may be familiar with him, spoke about plot points. And this very much was a plot structure template that he presented us with and explained. It was different than, like, say, the hero's journey. It was kind of his own proprietary set of plot points. But it was my first real introduction to story structure. I knew what the hero's journey was, but I had not studied it in depth. I kind of just had a passing knowledge of it, right? And I fell in love with story structure during that workshop, okay? I remember going home feeling completely lit up and so excited and thinking, this is it. Like, there is a way to know if I structure my story a certain way that my reader will love it. This is like the golden key to fiction writing. Now, I will say that that was not the golden key to fiction writing. That was the first step, and that was me in my naivety thinking that. But it did make me fall in love with story structure. And those plot points kicked off 15 plus years of my own study. My books got more organized, better paced. You know, it got better and better as I went along. I have read practically every craft book known to man, right? But there were still times that I would write something and it wasn't landing. And so I was that structure graduate we talked about, but with still certain flat scenes and flat books. And it was frustrating, right? Because even though that helped me immensely when it came to my writing, it wasn't 100% of what I needed, right? So if that, does that sound familiar to you? You don't have to answer in the chat this time, but just ask yourself, does that resonate with you? So in order to explain what's going on here and why so many authors go through this, I would say probably all of them, it's just part of the beginning stages of learning to write fiction, we need to understand the reaction of the reader, okay? It's really important to understand that, you know, of course we want to tell our stories. They're important to us. But to really be successful, we need to understand the reader's reaction to a story. If we can't understand that, there's no way for us to create the response that we want in the reader. So we need to understand why readers read fiction in the first place. Most answers that people come up with, so if I were to say, tell me in the chat, you know, why you think they read, you all come up with different answers, but similar answers, right? And most of those answers fall under what I like to call the 4 E's: education, enlightenment, entertainment, and escapism. Okay, we'll all come up with answers that are one of those, similar to those, related to those, that sort of thing. But here's the thing. That can't be the end-all, be-all answer, because readers could technically get these things from other activities, like listening to music or miniature golf, or if we're talking about education, why not read a textbook, right? So why fiction specifically? Why do they use fiction to have these experiences? Here's the answer. And if you take nothing else away, I want you to remember this, okay? Readers read fiction to feel big emotions in a safe space. I'm going to read that again because it bears repeating. Readers read fiction to feel big emotions in a safe space. Our world does not hold space for big emotions, does it? We're always told, stop being dramatic, don't make a scene, don't be a drama queen, right? But fiction gives us a place to feel and process what the real world won't allow. We are living vicariously through these characters. And the reason we enjoy the feeling of going through what the characters are going through, whether it's action and adventure or facing down a villain or danger or romance or whatever it is because human beings are made to feel these feelings, but we're so suppressed in real life, in our culture. And so we feel those feelings and we yearn to get back to that book and back to that story to find out what's going to happen because it feels so good to feel those feelings, right? So fiction has a very unique ability to help readers feel and process big emotions, but it's not happening to them in real life, right? They're not actually risking heartbreak. They're not actually risking being eaten by the dragon or whatever the case is. So it's a safe space for them to process those emotions without the real world consequences. So what does that mean? Your job as the author is to give your reader the deepest, most authentic emotional experience possible. Understand, this is not about what you write in your book, okay? I'm not going to tell you to put certain things in. I'm not going to tell you, it doesn't matter what genre you're working with or what tropes you're working with, whatever amazing, wonderful, genius story you already have. It's about making it the most emotional and authentic version of itself, okay? Your most avid readers are the ones who need emotional processing the most. So the people who read 10 books a week, we sometimes call them whale readers, they're going to be your number one audience. And because they need that emotional processing so much, cater to them. They live in fiction the most, so give them that emotional experience. And if you do, you will have fans for life. Okay? All right, so how do we do this? Very easy to say, very interesting to talk about. How do we get the emotion in? The answer is psychology. Psychology really is the pathway or framework of emotion. It's the logistics of emotion, how it's triggered, how it builds, how it releases, how it shows up in human behavior. So understand, I'm not talking about, don't think of this as something that's difficult. I'm not talking about reading a psychology textbook here or, mapping out the teeny tiny structures of the brain that have really big long names. Okay, we're talking about something happens which creates an emotional response, and then the human being reacts a certain way, right? When we're helpless, sometimes we lash out with anger, and that's really coming from fear of helplessness. That sort of thing. And because you are already writers, I know that you're pretty well versed in this, probably more than you think you are. If you understand basic things like why criminals are created and why they do what they do and how abuse can affect a person through life and mommy issues and daddy issues, you already know more than enough that you need to utilize the psychology in your story. Okay, so I say all of that so that you don't become intimidated. I'm not asking you to read a psychology textbook here. That's not what we're talking about. So emotion is the reason that readers read. Psychology is how that emotion gets onto the page. It needs to be applied at every level of your story, and that is the Unputdownable Fiction Code that makes every story irresistible to readers. This code runs at exactly 3 levels. If you miss a level, that's precisely where you're going to lose your reader. Hit all 3 and your book becomes physically difficult for them to stop reading. All right, so the code runs at 3 levels. As I said, there's the inner arc, or we sometimes call it the internal arc, the external arc, which is your plot. Those 2 things are the same. And then there's the actual scene work. 3 altitudes of the same story. So these are not three chronological parts of your story, like the 3-act structure. These are 3 layers of the same story. The character's soul, the story shape, and the actual words on the page. So you correlating that, okay? The internal arc is the character's soul. The external arc or plot is the story's shape. And of course, scene work is the actual writing of your scenes, the words on the page. For each level, we're gonna go through them right now. I'm gonna show you this, what it is, how it creates emotion psychologically, and a diagnostic to test your book against it. So I want you to have your manuscript in your mind's eye, front and center, and let's dive in. Level 1 is the internal arc. I'm gonna say something that might be a little controversial. I want you to quit trying to write dynamic characters. We all know that our characters should be, quote unquote, dynamic. But here's my problem with that. It is the vaguest advice in all of fiction. You cannot execute on vague advice. You need a step-by-step process. You need more specifics than that. It would be like if I said to you, okay, I'm going to give you a job. You're my employee. I want you to go bring me food. I'm hungry. Go find me a meal. But it needs to be something that I like. It needs to be a high-quality version of something that I like. And it needs to be, cooked or prepared or whatever in exactly the way I like it. Go. you would have questions, right? Well, I don't know what you like. Tell me what you like. Are we doing breakfast? Are we doing lunch? Are we doing dessert? And then once I figure out what you like, I mean, that's completely subjective. People like it prepared in different ways. How do you want it prepared, right? This is kind of what it's like when I tell you to write a dynamic character. You can't execute on that without being more specific. So stop trying to write dynamic characters, okay? What your character needs is an inner transformation arc. Story is a metaphor for a journey that leads to change. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. It is my favorite definition of story, and it was actually coined by Christopher Vogler, who wrote the Writer's Journey, which is a fantastic craft book, by the way. So I'm going to say it again, and I want you to really think about this meaning, this definition of story. Story is a metaphor for a journey that leads to change. Who is doing the changing? That would be your protagonist. So the story is a metaphor for the journey that your protagonist goes on that is going to lead to a change. And that change is emotional, psychological, spiritual. It is their inner change, which all of that means that the nature of story is about transformation. Everything else, your plot, your character relationships, the world building, all of it is layered on top of the character change, okay? People don't understand that about story. When we are focused on plot first, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love plot. I have all the fun in the world with an awesome plot, right? But if you're only focused on the plot, you're missing the inner transformation. You're missing the emotion. And the emotion is what's going to hook your reader. It is not the cool plot. It is not the plot twist, okay? It is the emotion. And you get that emotion by creating a character transformation. A real transformation gives readers a deep, cathartic experience. It's the emotion that makes readers love a book, okay? Not like a book, not think it was okay, but fall in love with the book. It's always the emotion. Every reader is carrying their own wounds and limiting beliefs. Because we're all human, so we all have them. When your character wrestles with their wounds and limiting beliefs, the reader is safely wrestling with their own. And that is why they feel the catharsis, right? Because they are embodying the story. They are living vicariously through that character. And when they feel it, they're not just feeling it out of sympathy for the character, they are empathizing and feeling it for themselves. So without a real inner arc, even a cool plot will always shortchange what you've built. The reader closes the book and feels fine and says, I liked it. So please understand that. It does not matter how amazing your plot is, and I am sure that it is. It will always fall flat if you don't dial in the inner arc. Okay, so how do you build a real transformation? I'm going to give you the 3 foundational pillars. These are actually not all of the pieces, but they're the ones that are the most important. You need a character wound, a limiting belief, and a transformation. The wound is an event in your character's past that caused genuine trauma, a wound that still bleeds. And that creates a limiting belief, a false belief that grew from the wound and still runs their life as the story opens. So let's give a really blunt example. Let's say you have someone who was abused as a child, physically abused. They were hit by their parents and told often, either with words or maybe just with the action, that they were worthless, right? Well, in that case, the abuse itself, whether it was one event or many events over time, is the wound. The belief is that they are worthless because that's the belief that they created for themselves based on that wound. And that's important because they're going to be taking that wound and that belief with them through the story, and it is going to inform how they act and how they react to events in your plot. All right? And then there's the transformation. At the climactic moment, at or around it, it can actually come before or after or during, they transcend that belief and triumph or fail. The payload of your novel detonates right there. So if you can take this character through a story, which is all a metaphor, right? Through your amazing plot, and at the end, somehow, however you craft it, they finally come to a point where they can let go of this limiting belief and say, you know what? My parents hit me because they had issues, and that is not on me, and that does not make me worthless. We've just seen them go through this journey, right? We saw the wound and how, of course, the audience is feeling so sad for this poor character, right? And we feel a lot of empathy for them, and then we see them struggle with it, and we feel so bad that they're struggling with that, and we want them to overcome it. We want to see them be victorious, and then when they finally do, it's like, oh, thank heaven. We want to see that victory for the characters. And so that's the payload of your novel. That's the biggest cathartic moment when you hit the transformation. All right. Inside the Unputdownable Fiction Code, which is one of my programs, I walk you through every step of the inner arc, the inner transformation, and show you exactly how to thread it through your manuscript, even if you've already written your manuscript. So I want to take a minute and let's test your manuscript. This is something you're just going to do mentally. I want you to answer these questions about your story honestly in your head. Number one, can you state your protagonist's wound in one sentence? Not their backstory. That's something different. Specifically the wound. If you can't, or you don't know what it is, you're missing something from your inner arc, and that is why your story is coming across as flat. Number two, can you state the limiting belief that grew out of this wound in the character's own voice? So something like, I believe I am worthless. I believe I am not smart enough. I believe because of who I am, because I'm a woman or a particular culture or a minority, that I am not going to be able to do whatever. Can you state that in your character's voice? If not, that is a problem. You're leaving emotion on the table and your audience is therefore not connecting with your character. Number three, does your climax resolve the plot or does it resolve the belief? Really, it should do both. Most people resolve the plot, but they don't even think about the belief. Okay, this is the number one anatomy of an I liked it book. Competent plot, but absent internal arc. If you just went, oh, that's okay, all right? You are not alone. Lots of people have this problem because we teach plot very well in our space, but we don't teach inner arc very well. And understand that this is wiring, not rebuilding. You might just need to insert things to, get that inner arc in there, but your plot can almost always stay. I'm not asking you to blow up your plot or start from scratch. Inside the Unputdownable Fiction Code, I show you exactly how to craft each pillar for your unique story and thread it through the manuscript you've already written. More on that later, okay? And once again, remember, there's more than 3 steps to the internal arc, but those are the main 3. If you dial those 3 in, you will still be light years ahead of people who are not even thinking about their internal arc. But if you wanted to get really, really specific and have really stellar internal arcs, there are more than 3 steps. Okay, so now let's talk about level 2. That was level 1, which was the inner arc. Now we're going to talk about the external arc or plot. We've talked about this a little, but readers don't turn pages because of what happens. I know we think that's the case, but actually they turn pages because they recognize a pattern they feel safe with. So I'm going to give you a little bit more psychology of the reader here. There's something that I like to call transformational human psychology, or THP. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but all it really means is the psychology is the step-by-step process, right? So it's the step-by-step process of how human beings transform. All human beings go through the same process to create change in their lives. We can do this through big things or small things. So these can be changes like taking a new job, moving to a new place, starting a new relationship, changing our, religious or political beliefs. Those are big life changes. Then we might talk about medium changes, which are more like learning a new skill or just deciding to do something that's going to give you a higher quality of life. Those are medium changes, right? And then there's even micro changes, like on the daily. Did we lose our keys? Did we just stub our toe? Are we frustrated because our kids are frustrating us? Okay, those are micro transformations. It doesn't matter whether it's a major, medium, or you can call it mini or micro transformation. The steps of the process are always the same, okay? And basic story structure mimics this process of human transformation. And while most readers can't articulate it, they intuitively recognize it because they live it every day and they get emotionally invested. So we tend to think that the reason that maybe sometimes we can predict what's going to happen in a plot is because we have just, watched a lot of TV and read a lot of books and we become used to story structure, so we can kind of see where it's going. And there's truth in that, certainly. The more story we absorb, the better we're going to get at that. But it doesn't start out that way, okay? Even small children, which I think I say here, even small children who have not been exposed to very many stories can still predict where they're going. And that is because it's the structure of transformation is just coded into our DNA. Now, you got to understand that the human brain is wired to recognize patterns. And patterns make us feel safe because it makes us feel like we have a handle on things and like we're understanding the world around us. So the second that we recognize a pattern, we start to feel safe. And that's true even of young children. So if you take this process that is inherent in our DNA, that all of us live every single day in and day out, and you position your story along this pattern, readers are going to latch onto it automatically. They're going to recognize it as something they feel safe with. And that means they get invested and they want to know how it ends and where it's going. But if you miss a step, you risk losing the reader at exactly that point in the story. So I use my own set of plot points. They are 10 steps that you need to include in order to create the pacing of a page turner. And those 10 points line up with the psychology of human change. Now, I'm going to tell you what these are. A few of these are going to sound familiar, and that is because, as I said before, basic story structure mirrors THP. So the hero's journey, the virgin's promise, save the cat. Even those, you remember those, if you're anything like me, those diagrams that they used to do when we were in grade school of plot, where it would just show like the curve going up, inciting incident, and then it's like rising action, rising action, rising action, and then up here would be the climax, and then there would be a little tail for the falling action or the denouement. Even that mirrors basic human transformation, right? But the problem is it doesn't capture enough detail to really generate emotion for your reader. So structure got you 80% of the shape, but 0% of the feeling. So the steps that I use and go through are number 1, the world before. Number 2, intro of conflict. Number 3, call to adventure. Number 4, early story escalation. 5 is your turning point. 6 is your late story escalation. 7 is your climax. 8 is your uber despair, which a lot of people call that dark night of the soul. I'm sure you've heard that term before. 9 is the aha moment, and 10 is the resolution. If you go through these and make sure that you are positioning your story based on these and that you aren't missing any of them, you will have a well-paced story that readers will be able to connect to, okay? Once again, inside the Unputdownable Fiction Code program, I'll go over them in great detail. I define what they are, how to craft them for your unique story, and show you how to implement them so that your novel automatically becomes a page turner. So, where is your book losing readers? I want you to map your manuscript against this. Do you have a saggy middle? That's a problem a lot of writers have, right? You're almost certainly missing or muddling the escalation steps, if that's the problem. The reader's itch, the thing pulling them forward through the novel, has been switched off. Does your ending not land? Look at the uber despair and the aha moment. If you don't have despair, you're not going to hit that catharsis. The height of your ending is measured from the depth of the hole before it. Okay? So the more your characters struggle, the higher the stakes are, the more they have to lose, the more they have to sacrifice. It's going to create that amount of catharsis when you finally reach the ending. So if it's vague or if it's not dialed in, guess what? The catharsis is also going to be extremely vague, and we don't want that. We want a really powerful catharsis. How about a beta reader that didn't finish? You would need to find the chapter where they stopped, and you'll probably find, once you look and know what to look for and how to fix it, you'll find a missing or broken piece right where they fell off, okay? DNFs are findable and fixable. It's just that no one's ever taught you how. Okay, so you have to understand, and you know, you guys, I was coaching a couple of authors today who are in the program, and I had to chuckle, but we were actually having a conversation about this, okay, and about how the thing that usually stops us from continuing our manuscript, stops us from sitting down to write the next chapter, you know, whatever it is we're struggling with, it's that we don't know how to fix it. And so our brain gets overwhelmed and shuts down. And then we go, okay, well, I guess I'm done for today. I don't know when I'll get back to this. But everything in your novel is fixable. Everything. You just have to understand how. And once you know how, you won't have this problem anymore of running into walls, because if something isn't working, you'll know exactly how to diagnose and fix it. All right. All right, so then we go to level 3. So once again, level 1 was inner arc. Level 2 is your plot and the structure of your story. Level 3 is actually writing your scenes and chapters. I'm telling you right now, your scenes are not boring. That is not the problem. I understand that's the way it comes across. You read them back to yourself, and either you think they're boring or you're afraid your reader will think they're boring. But that's not the problem, okay? That's just the way that you're perceiving it. They are actually just unfinished. And that's not your fault, because you've never been told this before. It's not that you're not creative enough. You were never taught how to actually finish a scene. Most of us have been stopping at the action layer our whole lives. So I still remember when I was first starting out that very often I would just write the action of the scene, meaning what happens, the events of the scene. Because you sometimes just have to get that down on paper, and that's perfectly okay. But usually you're not putting in the emotion of the scene. You're only writing the one layer. You've got to get that emotion layer in, or else your scene is unfinished. So you have to think of it as there are many different layers to a scene. There's what's actually happening in the plot. There's what's happening internally with the character, which is their thoughts and feelings. There's also their reactions to what is happening, which often they feel in their body. Those are things like her stomach dropped or a chill went down his spine. We forget to put those physical reactions in, okay? And if you're missing that, then the scene is just unfinished, but that's also why it's reading as boring, because without the emotion, the reader cannot latch onto it. The answer to every fiction writing question out there comes back to emotion. I promise you, in some way, shape, or form. Boring scene, flat character, slow pacing, fast pacing, you can all fix these. Sorry, you can fix all of those by looking at where you're missing the emotion. There are specific things that every scene needs in order to create emotion. Skipping them is like building only the foundation of a house and then being upset that it's not livable. So imagine that you are building a house, you pour the foundation, maybe you even frame the house, you know, the 2x4s frame the walls, and then you sit down and go, why don't I have plumbing? Why don't I have electricity? Why am I getting rained on? Well, because you only did the first 2 layers. You have to put in the piping, you have to put in the wiring, you have to put a roof on the house, you have to put up the sheetrock, or it's not going to be livable. But this is what we're doing with our scenes. We're writing one layer and then we're upset that they're not working for us, right? We've got to put all the layers in. And once we do, the scene will start to work like magic, right? But it's because you're missing things. First, your character's interiority, okay? I talked about this briefly, but you need thoughts, feelings, reactions, and body language. Readers don't want to observe your scene. They want to inhabit it. They want to embody it, okay? And you can only help them do that by giving them the character's thoughts, feelings, body language, and their reactions, what they are feeling in their body, okay? Then we have what I call SRTs, or secret reader triggers. This is the emotional heart of any chapter or scene. I really can't go into this in a 1-hour webinar because it's even hard to teach, so it takes a little while to get the hang of it. But basically, in any scene, there is the most emotional component of your scene, and that is always going to be the most compelling to your reader. So what I teach is how to find the SRT and then dial it up. Build the whole scene around it so that your entire scene is built around the most emotional part of that scene, okay? Most people don't do this. They just write straightforward, okay, this happens, then that happens, then that happens. And it's not that that's bad. You're just thinking about logically what needs to happen to make the story make sense. So that's a good thing. Like you should do that. But again, you're kind of ignoring the emotion if you do that, and you need both, okay? So secret reader triggers is another thing I teach. You can also use the same 10 plot points that you use to craft your entire plot, your entire story, to craft your scene on a mini level or a micro level. All right, so you can use those same 10 plot points. They look a little different on a scene level than they do on an entire book level. But again, they create pacing. And if you use them, the pacing of your scene will always be perfect. You will never have to worry about slow pacing or fast pacing or a boring scene. Writing your scene in layers if necessary. So this is what I already talked about. Most of the time we're only focusing on the action, but that's just the first layer. Now, you'll get to a point if you do a lot of writing, if you continue with your writing, where you can kind of do all of these things simultaneously. I do not write my scenes in layers anymore, which is not to say that I don't have to go back through and there's a part where I forgot a reaction or, I have a critique group. They'll be like, okay, this whole paragraph, we did not get her inner thoughts here. I'll be like, oh, okay, and I'll go put those in. So it's not that I'm perfect at doing it, but I can just more naturally weave everything together on the first try because it's just an experience thing. I've been doing it for a long time. But like I say, I remember when I was first starting, I was writing it in layers. And until you really get it down, that's a perfectly valid way to do it. Just make sure you aren't stopping at the first layer. Get all of the layers in there. Inside the Unputdownable Fiction Code, I'll show you exactly how to do all of this to make sure every scene you write is full of emotion and keeps your reader salivating for more. So, time to test your manuscript for this level. Open any scene of your manuscript in your mind. Pick one you've always felt lukewarm about. And ask yourself, do I know what my POV character is feeling at every turn? Not just what they're doing, what they are feeling. If no, figure it out. If yes, just put it on the page, okay? So if you say, no, I don't know what they're feeling, then you need to sit down and figure out what they're feeling and then put it in. Is there body language? Is there internal reaction? Are they feeling things in their body? Is there a single deliberate emotional trigger in it, or does the scene just convey events? If you write beautifully, and especially if your manuscripts are technically perfect, but readers are still saying they weren't pulled in, this level is why. Polish isn't the missing ingredient. Emotion is. And those physical reactions. I mean, you guys think about it. This is why the romance genre is so popular. Honestly, it's not romance like romance in and of itself that hooks a reader. It's the emotion that comes up because of the romance, right? It's hard, but it is possible to write romance badly. Okay, so that's how you know it's not the romance. But especially for genre romance and when there's spicy scenes, it is all about the physical sensations of the body. And that is so heavy on the emotion, okay? That hooks readers, that draws them in. And that is why that will always be the highest selling genre. Now, I don't personally write genre romance, and you don't have to either, but we still need to tap into that as it is appropriate for our story, right? We need to get those physical sensations in there to help the reader embody the character. And that is what gives them the emotional experience and makes them go, wow, that was a fantastic story. What else does that author write? I want everything she's ever written. If you're leaving out the emotion, then it reads like a textbook. It's just telling you what happened. And that's it. And guess what? That's boring. Don't do that. Okay, so let's look at this as a complete system. The inner arc is what creates the deep catharsis, the love. The external arc or plot creates the compulsive page turning. It's the pattern itch. They have to see what's going to happen because this pattern is so familiar to them that they just feel compelled to finish it out. Scene work creates the moment-to-moment immersion in the story, the feeling of living inside of it. If you can hook your reader at all three levels, your book will become physically difficult to put down. If you miss any of them, and that's exactly where and why you're going to lose your reader. So some of you may be saying, yeah, but isn't that really hard to do? I hear you, but the answer is this. Only if you don't know how. Like anything, it's just something you have to learn. And when you master it, you will not have this problem anymore. So I kind of said this earlier, but the biggest problem, the biggest things that shut us down in our writing is that we don't know how to do it. And then because we don't know what it's going to look like, our brain becomes overwhelmed and shuts down. So obviously, to make this simple and digestible, everything has to be broken down into bite-sized, easy, actionable steps, okay? So you're never facing add psychology to your novel. Like that would be overwhelming. You're facing, okay, answer this one question about your character's wound, and then this is how you're going to put it into your story. Do you have to rewrite your whole book? No, you don't. If you want to, you can, but definitely you don't have to. This is a retrofit, not a rebuild. Your plot's going to stay. Your world's going to stay. Writers with a finished manuscript often move faster because the raw material is already on the page. So if you look at this picture here at the bottom of the screen, she's trying to do what has got to be like a 1,000 or somewhere around there puzzle, a 1,000-piece puzzle. That's what I'm trying to say. and there's no picture. How on earth are you supposed to put that together? You wouldn't be able to. But if I know how to put it together and I just give you 5 pieces and say, okay, start with these 5 and connect them, that you can do. And I'll be like, okay, now connect these. That makes it a lot easier, right? You're not looking at this box full of 1,000 puzzle pieces trying to figure this out. So here's some of the writers that I have coached and them applying the code to their works in progress. This is Joy, who's one of my best students. In fact, she had been trying to finish her story for years, and after she joined my program, she has actually finished it now, just within the last couple of months, and she's now in the editing phase. And she says, okay, I just finished watching the internal arc videos, and wow, mind blown. If you are struggling with your plot, take Liesel's advice. And then Jean says, I've learned so much from Liesel in the lessons she offers about writing. So many of the lessons on character and story resonate, but the most important part about publishing what we write is to connect with the reader. This program shows you how to give the reader the story they want to read. And once again, I will reiterate, that's not because they changed anything in their story. They just made their story the most hooky version of itself so that the readers could really connect with it. Stories that hook the reader on every page. Keep them turning pages until 2 a.m. and leave them gushing in the reviews are not thrown together or guessed at. Okay? This is my quote. This is what I'm trying to tell you. If you are throwing your story together, if you are guessing at what happens, if you are throwing spaghetti against the wall, you're not going to end up with the finished product that you want. And you're not going to end up with the reader reaction that you want. Okay? Because those kinds of stories that have that effect on readers don't come from guessing. They are meticulously planned and intentionally infused with epic emotion, step by step, all 3 levels. So I would like to introduce to you the Unputdownable Fiction Code. This is the complete step-by-step psychology-driven system for diagnosing exactly what is missing in your story and adding it on the page so that your readers can't get enough. What the Unputdownable Fiction Code gives you: simple but powerful steps to infuse every part of your story with emotion so you hook your reader on every page. We go through, you guys, there's a lot of moving parts to story, right? So of course we're going to go through the theme, we're going to go through the protagonist, the antagonist, the world building, the character relationships, of course the plot. We're going to go through every single part, and I'm going to show you how to get it put on the page when we do the scene work, exactly what needs to go into a scene, how to write it so that there's emotion in it, all of that. Examples and case studies. I'm going to show you exactly how to implement every concept for ease of understanding. I give you popular mainstream stories and show you how they're doing this. I'm sure that all of you, like me, has deconstructed stories before, or at least some part of them, to figure out, like, okay, how did they do that? And how could I do that in my story? And that's great. I hope you are doing that. It is such a valuable, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a valuable exercise for authors who want to write fiction. You need to understand what's working in other fiction and why. But if sometimes there's just things we miss, right? And so you might be deconstructing, but you don't realize this is what they're doing, because it's hard to see if you don't already know what it is. So I give you these examples and case studies and say, look, here is the inner arc in Moana. This is how they did it. And that really helps you to be able to apply that to your story. And it's not just Moana, I have all kinds of examples, right? Again, it's teaching your brain to understand story structure, but more importantly, to understand the emotion that underlies story structure. And if you can do that, then you will, that's how you become a master storyteller, so that you always know what you should be doing, how to fix things, and how to make your story exactly the way you want it. You guys, you can control, and I don't mean control in a bad way, I guess maybe predict would be a better word. You can predict how your readers will respond to your story and make the story that gets them to respond in the way you want, if you know how to do this, right? You're not just going to be guessing and hoping your reader likes the story as much as you did, right? You will know exactly how to evoke those kinds of emotional responses in your reader. Watch me write my book. I've only gone through 1 pass of this. I'm going to go through more in the future, but I know that sometimes watching a video that is a training on how to do something in theory can still leave you a little bit confused. Not because the teaching is confusing, but just because we are writers. We overthink everything. Welcome to the club. if you are not an overthinker, maybe you're not really one of us. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so what I do is I show you how I implement each concept that I teach in my stories that I still write my own fiction, guys, right? I don't just teach. So when I started doing this at the beginning of the year, and like I said, I did one pass for the book I'm currently working on, but by more passes, I mean when I write other books in the future, I will show you as well. I got so many of my students who immediately messaged me and said, "Thank you so much for doing that. I was so overthinking how to do the theme. And when I saw you do it, I was like, oh, that's really simple," right? So implementation is a big deal. We can learn and learn and learn all we want, but watching someone else implement it makes it so much more relatable, right? So you're going to get to watch me write my book over my shoulder so that you can see what I'm doing and then do that, but of course for your own book. We have weekly Zoom calls where you can ask me anything. I can help you with whatever you're stuck with. This is just, I'm here to serve you, and this is part of it. So when I told you earlier that I was coaching two ladies who are in the program today, it was a weekly Zoom call that we were on. You'll get individual feedback, clarity on your story, and all your questions answered, plus 12 weeks inside the Legendary Fiction Forge community. So I also have, the program is the Unputdownable Fiction Code, but I also have the Legendary Fiction Forge, which is a community for authors. It's $67 a month, and in there you get monthly labs, lots of little mini trainings. We do group writing calls. Basically what that means is we have certain times we hop on Zoom, everyone turns off their microphones, and we all write together. And that gives accountability so that you have an hour pinned down where you're gonna write no matter what. But there's also just a vibe, of all of us authors all working on our manuscripts working toward the next publication. And it's a fantastic feeling of camaraderie. And I have had students tell me that those are the most valuable things to them that I offer, because that's what helped them get their book done, was just showing up so that they had the accountability to get the writing done. We also do twice monthly Q&As in the Legendary Fiction Forge. So as part of the program, you're going to get 12 free weeks in there. And then if you want to continue, then you would start paying the subscription after that. All right, but some of you might be thinking, okay, but can't I get all of this from YouTube videos or AI? AI is all the rage now. Why couldn't I just learn this from AI? You can definitely get surface level craft advice from online writing blogs, videos, or AI, but they generally don't link it to psychology, which gives you the why. So you have to understand this. I kind of have a little bit of a soapbox about online writing blogs. I know blogs are not as popular as they were 10 years ago, but you can go down a rabbit hole and tell me in the chat if you've done this, because I have done it so many times. You can go down a rabbit hole of online writing blogs where you have all these articles that sound fantastic and you want to learn what they teach. And so you have all these tabs open and you end up reading through all of them, and you probably get a few nuggets that are really good, that are helpful. But at the end of the day, your brain is spinning and you still don't know how to finish your book, right? And the reason that happens is because most online writing blogs are just regurgitated surface level craft advice. Here's what a villain is. You should have dynamic characters. Here's some world building tips, right? And those are great. They're valuable, but they're not going to teach you how to finish your book, and they're not going to teach you the psychology of emotion. All right. And AI is pulling from everything on the internet, which means it's pulling from those writing blogs, right? It's not going to be able to teach you what you need to know. That's all I'm saying. You can get some good advice from that, but you're not going to get what's taught in this program. They don't show you how to implement. You're not going to be able to watch me write my book by asking AI about this, right? And they just tell you what to do, like create dynamic characters, and then they say, "Good luck, go do it, have fun with that," and you're still going, I don't know how to make this better. It's still reading as flat, right? So if all of these things, online writing blogs, AI, or YouTube videos worked, I don't think you'd probably be here on this webinar with me. All right, so if you want to join the Unputdownable Fiction Code, I have all these prices here because I've sold it at a lot of different prices. The $29.97 was more like one-on-one coaching. The $14.97 was a cohort. $9.97 is what the DIY program is worth, but I'm now today selling it at $7.47. If you go look on my website, that's the price that you'll see. And the reason for that is this isn't a one book fix, right? This is, I can coach you, I can help you. Any question you have, I will give you the answer. I can work on your individual book with you during the Zoom calls. But once you have this, you're going to be able to use it on every story you ever write moving forward forever. Okay. This is going to teach you a skill, how to diagnose and fix what is wrong. And so you won't have to worry that any book you ever write is not going to resonate. I can't tell you how often I've heard the story that a writer writes a book and it goes viral. It goes big. They get 10,000 downloads. They make all this money and then they write a second one and it flops. And they are so frustrated because they don't know why. They can't understand why the first one worked and the second one didn't. And I can tell you why from a high level. Of course, I'd have to look at the specific book to diagnose it, but it's because somehow they stumbled upon real emotion in that first book, but they didn't know how to replicate it. Okay. So the second book was slim on emotion and it fell flat. They're missing one of those levels and they don't know which one. So you will be able to use this for every book you ever write for the rest of your life. This is going to make you a master fiction writer. But I am also having a special right now through, oh, that says Monday. I'm sorry. It's not through this Monday. It's through Thursday. I will fix that. The last time I did this webinar, I did it on a Thursday. And so I give you 4 days, right? It was Monday before. So I'm going to give you through Thursday. You can use the coupon code 100 off as it's written there. So it's 100 and then OFF, all capitalized, all one word at checkout, and you get a $100 discount. So that means you can get the program for $647 today through Thursday. I also do have a finish your novel guarantee. Due to the nature of my course offerings, I do not offer refunds because once you know this, you can't unknow it, right? However, if you have trouble finishing your novel or with any part of it, I will work with you until you do. I am committed to helping you finish and publish your novel and achieve your fiction author dreams. If you're ready to do the work, I am ready to make certain that you succeed. Like I told you at the beginning of the webinar, guys, I love fiction. I love the way that it makes us more emotionally healthy. I love the experience of fiction. I love thinking about fiction. I love writing fiction. And I know how frustrating it is when you have a story that you know needs to go out to the world and you know that the readers are going to love it, but you are struggling with how to present it in a way that they can connect with. Okay. I have been there. So I don't want that to happen to you. I'm here to make sure that you succeed, that you create the most unputdownable version of your unique story. Okay. And I stand by that guarantee. So this is all to say, we're not looking for tire kickers here. If you're not willing to do the work, this is probably not for you. Okay. But if you're willing to do the work, I will make certain that you succeed. But I don't know anything about psychology. I get that question too. Maybe you don't, but that's why I created a bonus for you. It's called Foundations in Story Psychology. The instant you join, you'll get access to this training as well. Stop guessing at why your story isn't landing. Start writing books readers can't stop talking about. So if you ever feel like you can't put your finger on why readers aren't gushing, why your plot feels mechanical, or why you're stuck in the muddy middle with no idea what happens next, just know it's not your talent. It's not your premise. Your story is fine. You're missing the hidden psychological framework that makes readers fall in love with a story. And once you see it, you'll never write the same way again. So this course, it is a lot of what we've talked about in this webinar. It's THP, the true secret to hooking readers, which is emotion, why your ideas won't flow, how to finally finish your book. But I've really only scratched the surface in this webinar, and this goes a lot deeper into that. So this isn't just another plot template. It's a psychological foundation that makes every other writing technique actually work. So if you've tried something and gone, yeah, my story doesn't have that, I should do that, and then it still kind of falls flat, well, once you get the emotion put in and you understand true reader psychology and how to use your story to connect with your readers, pretty much any writing technique that hasn't worked before will start to work because you'll have that emotional element now. But what if I plan everything and still can't get the words down on the page? This is a legitimate concern. We all have those days where we really want to write and we're trying and we just can't seem to make our brain do it, right? Well, I have another bonus for that. You sit down to write and nothing comes. The cursor blinks, you force out a few sentences, delete them, wonder if the story or fiction writing is even in you. You've got too many ideas and no way to choose between them. You've tried outlining, but the second you start writing, it falls apart. That sound familiar? You got to know that writer's block isn't real, at least not in the way most people think. What's actually happening is you're trying to force your story from your logical, conscious mind when your real story lives in your subconscious. Okay? Now, that may sound a little like Latin to some of you, but the point is, I explain the role of the subconscious mind in writing, and it is so much greater than most people realize. And we are trying to use our logical, conscious brain to write our story when we should be using our subconscious mind. It's a very subtle shift, but it makes all the difference, and it disintegrates writer's block when you learn how to do it. So in the Subconscious Storyteller, you'll learn my complete divine genius method, the exact process I use to pull ideas, endings, and entire scenes straight from my subconscious on command. You'll discover how to get crystal clear on what you want for your story, meditate a scene into being before you ever type a word of it, resolve indecision through intuition, and double your word count in 30 days, all without the burnout. Okay? We have been programmed to think that writing is very, very hard. Writing is not hard. Is it work? Yes, but it should be fun, empowering work. There is a way to do writing, right? There is a way to get your writing done, to get your stories written, and it can be easy, and it can be relaxing, and it can be just the opposite of the struggle you've been going through. You've just never been taught how. So understand that this isn't another productivity hack, right? It's a complete shift in how you create. So the words flow easily and the story arrives whole like magic instead of a grind. Your subconscious already knows your story, okay? Sit with that for a minute. The story, every element of it, it's already sitting in your subconscious mind. I promise you that. You just haven't learned how to access it. So let me show you how to free it. You are going to get this bonus, the Subconscious Storyteller, when you sign up today. All right, and then I do have one more fast action bonus, which is the Art of the Angsty Blurb. If you join in the next 15 minutes, and I usually do within 15 minutes of the end of the webinar, just because depending on Q&A, I don't know exactly when the webinar is going to end. So if you join within 15 minutes of the end of the webinar, I'm throwing in something most authors desperately need, but almost never get, the Art of the Angsty Blurb. Let's be honest, especially once you take the Unputdownable Fiction program, you're going to be able to fairly easily write a 90,000 word novel where readers ugly cry on page 230, but then you completely freeze up when it's time to write the 150 word blurb that's supposed to sell it. If that sounds familiar, then this is for you. You stare at the back cover copy for hours. You write something that sounds like a book report instead of an invitation. You list plot points instead of making someone's chest tighten. You guys, the emotion still needs to be present in the blurb. This is what is going to sell your novel to readers. But it's very different than writing a narrative story, right? So the worst part is, you know your story is good. You just can't translate that gut punch emotion into a few short paragraphs that make a stranger scrolling on Amazon stop and think, ooh, I need this, right? But why that happens is because blurb writing is a completely different skill from novel writing. You can't just summarize, you have to seduce. You have to take everything you know about your character's deepest wounds and dangle just enough to make someone's heart ache for more. The good news is that with the Unputdownable Fiction program, the hardest part is already going to be done. You will know your characters and your story inside and out, and especially the emotion driving it. That's exactly what I'm going to teach you. The Art of the Angsty Blurb gives you the framework to take the knowledge and turn it into blurbs that hook readers before they even open the first page. A skill you'll use again and again for every book you write. So, once again, if you join within 15 minutes of the end of the webinar, you will also get this fast action bonus, but only if you join within 15 minutes. Okay, so let's look at everything you get here. The Unputdownable Fiction Code is the complete step-by-step psychology-driven system for diagnosing exactly what is missing in your story and adding it on the page so your readers can't get enough. You're going to get the simple but powerful code, step-by-step, how to do this for every part of your story, all 3 levels. You're going to get examples, case studies, and plenty of other tools and resources. Within each module, I give you actually different tools and resources that would not really, it would be too much to try to mention them here, but I have all kinds of things to help you figure out your story. You get watch me write my book for implementation. You get to watch me apply every principle in the course to my own story in real time, so you can see what to do and stop overthinking it. Maybe I should just call that overthink no more or something like that. You get 12 weeks of Zoom calls, so you get individual help, clarity, and your questions answered. And then you also get 12 weeks inside the Legendary Fiction Forge, where you're going to get access to extra trainings, group writing calls, our stellar community, monthly Q&As, and more. So altogether, that's a $3,692 value. But once again, it's $747 today, or if you use the coupon code by Thursday, you can get it for $647. I do have a 3-pay plan, which is $274 for 3 months. If you use the $100 off, then I believe it takes it off the first payment, so it'll probably be $174 for the first payment, and then the other two will be $274. And if you join within 15 minutes, you'll get the Art of the Angsty blurb as well. Okay, so here is the, and what I'm going to do really quickly here is I'm going to put this URL in the chat. Let's see. Okay, make sure that I'm spelling everything correctly here. You know what? Let me stop this share. This is confusing me. Okay, and then I'm going to, there we go, just so that you have a clickable link. So let me go back to my slideshow here. And actually, before we move forward, I do have, I wanted to see if you guys had any questions. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, but I'm going to go through kind of the biggest questions that I get so that I'm answering those. And then if you have any others I haven't answered, then we can spend a few minutes answering them before we close out. And we are actually doing really good on time. Okay. So my manuscript is already written. Let me know if you guys can't see this. You can see my slides, right? And somebody tell me if you can see my slides. Will this actually work for me? If your manuscript is already written, you are not the edge case of this program. You are the center of it. You'll run your finished manuscript through each level and then tweak and add. Do I have to start over? Because I will cry. No. Retrofit, not rebuild. Your draft is raw material and an advantage. Writers with finished manuscripts often move through the program faster. I've spent money on courses before, but haven't seen results. How is this different? Most programs repackage generic craft advice, unfortunately. They give you the what without the why or the how. The Unputdownable Fiction Code is built on the psychology with full implementation plus live feedback on your actual manuscript, if you want it, if you want to come to the Zoom calls. What if I have very little time right now? That's totally fine. You can go at your own pace. Even 30 minutes a week moves you through it because you're not drafting from scratch. You're just upgrading the one that exists. So it's a 12-week program, but you don't have to go that fast. You can go at whatever pace you want. All right. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask them. What if I go through the whole course and my writing is still flat? You got to understand that that is actually not possible. Flat writing comes from a lack of emotion, period. If you put the emotion in the way I teach you, your readers will not be bored. If they are still bored, it's because you're still missing something. Okay. So you're worried about that because that's happened with other writing programs, but they have not addressed what is actually making your manuscript remain flat, and this does, and we'll fix it. Should I just finish my current revision pass first and do this later? Well, another polish pass without the code is rearranging furniture in a house with no electricity, okay? Spend those hours on the layer that actually changes the reader's response. So you can finish your current pass if you want to, but it's not going to solve the problem. You're still going to have to come back and fix the problem before it gets to where you want it to be. So you might as well not waste your time. Just get started now on what's going to give you results. What if I've never actually finished a book before? I'm 70% in and stalled. Perfect. Honestly, stalling at the 70% mark is almost always a symptom of a missing inner arc or a broken step in the sequence. The story runs out of psychological fuel, not ideas. Plus, the guarantee literally says it in the name. Finish your novel guarantee. I will help you get it finished. What if I haven't started? Like, I have a premise or a character, but literally nothing else. That's perfectly okay too. We'll simply be building your novel from the ground up using the same psychological principles for all three levels so that your finished story has six-figure potential. Okay, so you now have a choice in front of you. 90 minutes ago, your manuscript was falling flat. Now you know why. Emotion is the reason, psychology is the pathway, and it has to live at all three levels. So your first option is to close this tab, close the webinar, keep the diagnosis, try to fix it alone. Another polish pass, another final version 8 folder-ish, another year circling a book that's close to being done, but not quite there yet. Or option 2, you can spend 12 weeks or however long you need wiring in the code until it becomes the book readers stay up till 2 a.m. with. Write your soul story. Your readers, I promise you, are waiting for it. Okay, so that is about all I have for you guys today. Do you have any questions that I can answer about anything, whether it's about the program, about your stories, anything like that? I will give you just a minute. And if nobody has any questions, then we are going to wrap up for today.